They'll shout over your crown, but they weren't there for your cross. They see the elevation, but they didn't witness the excavation it took to dig your way out of that pit. They see you standing, shining, speaking with power, but they don't know the price tag hanging on your testimony. See, everybody wants the oil, but nobody wants the crushing. They want the anointing, but not the agony. They want the platform, but not the pressure. But let me tell you something, the glory didn't come cheap. You didn't just stumble into favor. You had to fight for it. You had to bleed for it. You had to cry for it. You had to go through some things that would have broken others, but somehow you're still standing because you knew this this was going to cost you something. They weren't there when you were pacing the floor at 3 a.m., asking God why. They didn't see you curled up in that corner, wondering if you could even make it another day. They weren't present when you had to keep showing up while silently falling apart. They don't know about the silent sacrifices. They don't know the things you gave up to protect your peace. They don't know the temptations you turned down, the friends you had to walk away from, the places you had to leave just to stay aligned with the call on your life. They weren't there when you said yes to destiny but had to say no to comfort. Oh, they want your seat, but they couldn't handle your story. They see your smile, but they couldn't bear your scars. And if they had gone through what you went through, they might have lost their mind, their faith, their will to live. But here you are not perfect, but preserved, not untouched, but unbroken. And if they ever ask you, how did you get here? You better tell them it wasn't luck. It wasn't easy. It wasn't handed to you. It cost you something. And only God knows how much. See, there is a difference between people who are just gifted and people who are graced. The gifted might be admired, but the graced are anointed by the grind. You were forged in the fire. Your tears watered your purpose. Your suffering shaped your voice. That's why your words carry weight, because they were birthed in the furnace of affliction. You didn't inherit this mantle, you endured for it. So the next time someone claps for your breakthrough, smile. Thank them, but deep down know this. They're clapping for what they see, but they'll never know what it cost. Because the weight of your story is too heavy for casual conversations. The glory on your life was paid for with moments you don't even talk about anymore. That's why you walk with humility. That's why you praise with such fire. That's why you worship with such depth. Because you remember the price. You remember the process. You remember the pain, and only God knows the cost. You've learned how to fight without making noise, how to cry without drawing attention, how to press forward with a silent determination that no one around you even recognized. You've been battling behind the scenes while smiling in front of the crowd. And the truth is, if people knew what it took just for you to show up, they would be stunned. They saw the strength, but they didn't see the struggle. They celebrated the outcome, but they never witnessed the cost. Because you don't wear your pain like a badge. You wear your purpose like a promise. People look at you and assume you're fine because you function well. They see the excellence, the grace, the poise, but they don't know you had to wipe your tears off your pillow just to get out of bed. You've been walking through the fire without smelling like smoke, smiling while bleeding, laughing while breaking. And the reason nobody knew is because you learned how to carry the weight in silence. You didn't wait for a cheerleading squad. You didn't need anyone to validate your fight. You found out that some battles aren't meant to be broadcast, they're meant to build you in the dark. God was teaching you how to stand alone. He was growing your roots in private before letting your fruit be seen in public. And now people see your calm, but they didn't witness the chaos that came before it. They didn't see the nights you had to encourage yourself with trembling hands and a weary heart. They didn't hear the cries that came from the depth of your soul when nobody else was listening. You became a warrior in secret, a fighter in the furnace, a survivor in the shadows, and you didn't quit. You didn't let the silence become your sentence. You didn't allow loneliness to rob you of your assignment. Instead, you pressed your way through dark seasons with nothing but faith and fragments. And now the light on your life is not because things were easy, but because you kept going when everything told you to stop. You endured what others would have escaped. You withstood what would have wrecked someone else. And you did it all without applause. Don't be discouraged when people don't understand your journey. They weren't called to it. Don't get bitter when they overlook your story. They couldn't handle your process. You've carried your breakthrough like a secret seed, hidden in the soil of silence, growing when no one was watching. And now that it's starting to bloom, don't be surprised when they want to enjoy the harvest, but weren't there for the sowing. That's why you walk with authority. That's why you praise with conviction, because nobody had to pull you through. You learned how to crawl when there was no one to carry you. You learned how to fight with no audience and how to win without witnesses. Because when your battle is private, your victory becomes personal. And ***, only God knows how hard you fought to survive in silence. ***, you didn't make it through just because you were strong. Strength ran out. Strength walked out. Strength gave up on you. There were moments when your own hands couldn't hold up your head. Times when your legs trembled beneath the pressure, and your heart felt like it would shatter into 1,000 pieces. You weren't held together by willpower. You were held together by grace. Grace stepped in when your grip slipped. Grace carried you when grit couldn't. Grace became your anchor when everything else was drifting. People looked at you and said, "You're so strong." But if only they knew the truth. If only they knew how many times you whispered, "God, I can't do this anymore." If only they knew the number of days you showed up in rooms, handled business, took care of others, and gave encouragement, while inside you were barely breathing. You were functioning on empty, running on fumes, and it wasn't your own power that got you through. It was supernatural strength flowing in invisible ways. There were moments you didn't pray like a warrior. You didn't shout like a soldier, you just groaned, sat in silence, laid there staring at the ceiling, too numb to speak, too tired to move. But even then, grace found you. Even when you didn't have the words, grace spoke on your behalf. Even when your faith felt faint, grace stood strong. And while the world saw you smiling, inside you were leaning on a God who never let you fall. You didn't always walk boldly. You crawled through some seasons. You didn't always feel victorious. You survived by inches. But grace was present in the moments nobody applauded. In the quiet places where healing was slow and hope seemed distant, grace met you in the middle of your breakdown and turned it into a breakthrough. Not because you were perfect, but because you were chosen, and the choosing came with covering. That's why you can look back now and shake your head in wonder. Because you know you didn't make it on your own. You know you should have lost it. You should have gone under. You should have folded under the pressure. But grace pulled you through like a lifeline in the storm. And it didn't make a lot of noise when it did it. It didn't ask for permission. It just did what grace does: preserve, protect, and propel. So don't get it twisted. Your testimony isn't built on your strength. Your story isn't about how powerful you were, but how present God was. Every time you were weak, He was strong. Every time you were empty, He filled you. And when you thought it was over, He whispered, "Not yet." You were carried, not by might, not by fight, but by grace. Asterisk, asterisk, grace did what grit could not. Grace lifted what your hands couldn't carry. And only God knows how many times grace saved your life. Asterisk, asterisk, that pain wasn't pointless. That heartbreak wasn't wasted. Every tear, every betrayal, every lonely night had purpose wrapped inside of it. You thought it was punishment, but it was preparation. You thought the delay was denial, but it was development. You see, nothing you walked through was random. Every wound had an assignment. Every scar came with instruction. And while others saw only the suffering, heaven saw the shaping. You didn't understand why the door had to close, why they walked away, why the opportunity dried up. But now you're starting to see glimpses of the why. Now you're starting to feel the strength in places that used to feel broken. Now you're realizing that God wasn't trying to hurt you. He was trying to build you. He was toughening your skin, expanding your spirit, increasing your capacity. The pain was carving out a deeper place for purpose. You couldn't learn what you needed in comfort. Comfort never birthed character. It was the crushing that produced the oil. It was the pressure that revealed the power. Had you stayed where it was easy, you would have never discovered what you were really made of. But in the fire, you found your faith. In the storm, you found your voice. In the valley, you found your vision. God used the very thing that tried to break you to bless you. Pain taught you how to pray. Not the kind of prayer that impresses people, but the kind that shakes heaven. The kind that starts with groans and ends in glory. The kind that only comes from desperation. You didn't become powerful through pleasure. You became powerful through pain. And because of it, you walk differently now. You see differently. You don't move with the same fear. You don't break under the same pressure, because you know what it's like to survive what should have destroyed you. And you're still here. That's the miracle. Not that you avoided the fire, but that you went through it and came out wiser. Stronger, purer. You learned how to stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Use me." You stopped seeing the trial as trouble and started seeing it as training. That pain taught you how to discern, how to set boundaries, how to love yourself, how to protect your peace. You are being refined, not rejected, processed, not punished. So don't despise what developed you. Don't curse what crafted you. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it hurt. But look at you now. You've got wisdom in your walk, fire in your faith, glory in your gaze, because purpose doesn't come wrapped in pretty packages. It often arrives in pain. And even though others may never understand what you've been through, even though they may never see the value in your valley, asterisk, asterisk, God does. He saw the tears, measured the cost, and used it all to mold you for the purpose you're living now. Asterisk, asterisk, you don't need their approval when you've already been appointed. You don't need their applause when heaven has already affirmed you. Too long you waited for people to clap for you, to understand you, to recognize what was on your life. But there came a moment when you realized they didn't call you, so they can't cancel you. They didn't start this work in you, and they sure can't stop it. What's in you was placed by the Creator, and asterisk, asterisk, purpose doesn't require permission. Asterisk asterisk, you spent seasons shrinking to fit rooms that were never meant to hold your calling. Dimming your light so others could feel comfortable. Holding back your voice so insecure hearts wouldn't feel threatened. But something shifted. You woke up. You realized that no one else gets to define your worth but the one who designed you. You stopped chasing affirmation and started walking in authority. You stopped asking, "Am I good enough?" and started declaring, "I am chosen, I am equipped, I am ready." And when people started pulling away, you stopped panicking, because you learned, when man walks out, it's often because God is moving you into something greater. The ones who couldn't handle your growth were never assigned to your future. They loved the version of you that played small, but your destiny demanded more. So you stopped apologizing for becoming who you were always meant to be. When others saw just a worker, God saw a warrior. When they saw brokenness, He saw brilliance. When they saw flaws, He saw favor. That's why you no longer live for validation from temporary voices. You live for the approval of the eternal. People will flip on you, they'll forget you, they'll misunderstand the very thing that makes you divine. But that doesn't shake you anymore because you're rooted in something deeper, something unshakable. You know now that silence doesn't mean absence. Just because they didn't acknowledge you doesn't mean God ignored you. He was watching you when no one else was looking, applauding your faithfulness, counting your tears, strengthening your hands for the assignment ahead. And when the time was right, He began to elevate you not because people agreed with it, but because asterisk asterisk purpose was always louder than popularity. Asterisk asterisk, so don't get distracted by who doesn't believe in you. Don't waste your breath trying to explain what God is doing in your life. Some things are spiritually discerned. Some things are only understood by those who have been through the process. Keep your focus, keep your fire, keep your faith, because when God marks you, no one can unmark you. You are walking proof that you don't need a crowd to carry a calling. You are a living example that asterisk asterisk favor isn't always fair, but it is always faithful. Asterisk asterisk, and no matter who claps or who criticizes, you move forward knowing that your value was never in their hands. Begin with, nobody saw what you survived. Nobody felt the weight of what was pressing on your soul day after day. You walked through storms smiling, showed up in rooms bleeding, held your head high when your heart was breaking, and they still don't know. Because some things were never meant for people to understand. Some things were between you and God. Some pain was too deep to explain, too sacred to unpack, too holy to be handled by human hands, and so you walked with it, talked through it, praised in it, and pressed on. Because even when no one else knew, asterisk asterisk, God did. Asterisk asterisk, He was there when you couldn't sleep. He was there when you cried until you couldn't cry anymore. He was there when your strength failed and your soul was tired. Nobody else noticed the moment you almost gave up, but heaven did. God saw the nights when you curled up in the dark with questions that had no answers. He watched as you battled fears that you never dared to voice. He heard the prayers you didn't know how to pray, and still He covered you. People saw the light, but not the fire you walked through to carry it. They heard your voice, but didn't recognize the wilderness you traveled just to speak with clarity. They celebrate your glory, but they didn't witness your grief. They honor your success, but they have no clue about your suffering. Because asterisk asterisk, only God knows the cost. Asterisk asterisk, only He knows the depth of the valley the heat of the furnace, the crushing of the process that birthed the oil in your life. That's why your worship is different. Your praise isn't polished, it's personal. You don't dance because everything is perfect. You dance because everything tried to kill you and failed. You don't shout because you're religious. You shout because you're grateful. You're still standing, still sane, still serving, not because life was easy, but because God was present. And when no one else showed up for you, when people walked away, when the phone stopped ringing and the support stopped coming, He was still there. Steady, faithful, silent, maybe, but never absent. So now, you've learned to stop explaining your journey. You don't need everyone to get it, because this isn't about them. This is between you and the God who walked with you through the fire and never let it consume you. The God who covered you when you were uncovered, who held you when you were breaking, who kept you when you couldn't keep yourself. That's why, even when people don't understand your level of faith, your depth of joy, or the weight behind your words, you don't let it shake you. Because you remember what it took just to breathe, just to trust again, just to get up and try one more time. And through it all, ***, only God knows how far you've come, how much you've carried, and how heavy the cost truly was. ***.